people of color are political pawns during election cycle. And, it's one of the reasons why I actually shifted. I was a lifelong Democrat before I shifted to Republican about 8 years ago. And, I felt like I was being hustled for my vote as a woman of color.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Well, she is Danielle Hall. She has raised 10 kids. 2 of them are still at home. She's successfully launched 8. She has served in the military. She has a master's in business. She did a lot of her child rearing by herself. She is an amazing woman. She knows a lot about the political system, policy, how it works. She has run for lieutenant governor in Delaware, and now she's running for Congress. And she's running against a trans person who has managed to raise a lot of money simply from the trans activist world out there. But this woman really knows what she's doing. This is not about an ideology. This is not about an identity. This is about understanding how much policy matters, not just to people in Delaware, but across the country. I am really proud to be bringing Danielle Hall, a businesswoman, like I said, a mother of 10, a Gulf War era veteran, just a remarkable human being. And she's a Republican. Let's meet her next. Danielle, it's great to see you again. Welcome. You have lived in Delaware for some time. And you're in a state where the current president, Joe Biden, resides and is vacationing quite a bit, where his son is undergoing trial right now as we speak. Now, this may air a few days later from now, but as we speak, the jury is deliberating. What is it like to live in that state? It's small. It seems like the Biden presence is overwhelming.
Well, first, thank you for having me today, Michelle. I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast. Delaware is my longtime home. My father was stationed here in 1973, which put me at the ripe old age of 3 when we moved here. I was educated in the public schools here, and after I graduated, I went to the University of Delaware to study engineering for a few years. I was interrupted because I had my first child, midstream education. So at that time, Uncle Sam was saying, come on and get an education on us. And so I took him up on his offer and went into the Air Force myself. I was away for about 7 years. I was serving in support of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And I came back to Delaware, moved my family back here in 1997, and I've been here ever since. The lay of the land in Delaware has always been friendly to those who are retiring or wanting to raise their families here. It's not a great place if you're looking for opportunity. So a lot of people like myself are looking for the first thing smoking after they graduate from high school for opportunity elsewhere. Sadly, it's still that way here. We really are in dire need of some economic development opportunities here. People are struggling in Joe Biden's home state. We are currently among the lowest in the nation for our GDP. And we just have a lot of issues here. And it's very sad that the president's home state is lagging so far behind in education and economic opportunity. So I'd like to be a voice to help change that in Congress.
It's always interesting to ask people why they are running for Congress, because it seems like a thankless job. It's a lot of work to run. And then you get there and maybe you feel you're one of 435. Can you really do anything? What was the one thing that kind of was the straw on the camel's back that made you say, now's the time, I'm running, I have to?
Well, this is not my first rodeo, and I actually ran most recently statewide in 2020 for lieutenant governor. And, my passion has always been to represent those people who are marginalized. You always hear politicians come out and talk about the marginalized communities. Those are the people who are forgotten and overlooked. And I've certainly felt that way most of my adult life here. I felt that I really didn't have representative voice in government that could articulate my particular truths to power. So, I bring a unique background with 10 beautiful children. I'm happy to say that 8 of them have emancipated themselves from my wallet. I have 2 full-timers at home, yes, and they are 12 and 13. They're going into the 7th and the 9th grade. So, things that are going on in our public education space. We currently have some very woeful statistics. 40% of our kids are on reading level at the 8th grade. 30% are on math level at 8th grade. And so, essentially what we're doing is we are pushing these kids through the school systems, and they're neither college or career ready when they come out on the other side. So there's just, a lot of things that are going on here. As a small business owner, I see that, the regulatory things are a hindrance to small businesses. And because we don't have big business in Delaware anymore, no manufacturing to speak of, there's just a dire need to make sure that our small business community is undergird. I'm a veteran of the Air Force and 3 generations strong in my family. One of the things that really bothers me greatly is the fact that, we don't take care of our men and women who have courageously served this country. And so, those are just a highlight reel of some of the things that have really incentivized me to run so that we would have a voice in government that would impact policy where it would benefit most Americans.
I almost get exhausted listening to you because of all the things you've done in your life and with your life and accomplished already. Like you said, you just 2 of the 10 kids are left under your wing. 8 you've successfully launched. That alone is like unbelievable to me that you've been able to raise so many children and put them out into the world as grown humans who can take care of themselves now, and your service and your small business and your education, all of those things. How energized are you? What are you drinking in the morning that the rest of us don't know about?
I can honestly say that politics is hugely personal for me. And so I just have a high octane level naturally because, the inclination to do some of these things, it disrupts my sleep, quite honestly. Sometimes I go to bed with a heart full of angst from whatever has gone on politically during the day. And it wakes me up in the middle of the morning with just a burst of energy to try and do whatever it is that I can change the lay of the landscape politically for.
I relate to you on that. That was the feeling that I had, and I still have it, which led me to leave my career in sports journalism and say, I've got to have a voice in the things that are really, really important. And these policies are really important. What do you see as the first step to fixing education, not just in Delaware, but nationally? This troubles me. I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. I watched her work so hard. And at that time, I think American schools, when I was growing up, were really one of the pieces of Americana that made us proud, made us excellent, made us unique. Where do we start, Danielle?
Well, I think that accountability across anything governmental is key. I think that for far too long, we've allowed these things to just trevene on down a path uncorrected because we're really not holding people accountable. And that's evident in our school systems. I think from the federal side, the thing that I would like to do is be a champion for revisiting, it used to be No Child Left Behind. We haven't had any movement in changing the language at the national level that gives guidance to our Title I funds. And those are federal dollars that track into the states. And so I think from that perspective, we can definitely have some more accountability. I used to serve with the U.S. Department of Labor, and we had a quarterly reporting system for those dollars that came in to service our veterans outreach programs, which I oversaw. And so, I'm thinking to myself, there's a thought. Maybe if we have a reporting system that has some measurable outcomes and some metrics for people to have to size up to, that might be key. It seems that when you hold the purse strings a little tighter and have some more guidance and guidelines on being able to receive those funds, it causes people to do right by the institutions that those dollars serve. So education is definitely one of those things. The other thing that I believe is that we need to give controls back to parents. I think that being able to have school choice and the dreaded voucher word that people, don't like to hear, I think that promotes a competitive nature just intrinsically, so that these schools are competing for the dollars because they see the value in that student. And I think that also will incentivize some of these schools to raise their standards. Unfortunately, here in the state of Delaware, you get a 50 just for showing up for school in the morning. And if you raise your hand, you get a 60, and 60 is passing. Yeah. And so, these kids essentially are just being pushed through the system, and they're not required to really do anything to earn that A. I actually had an opportunity to see that. I wanted to put my children in a private school, and I had them assessed, and they were testing a full grade level behind. And I was astonished because they were getting A's on their report card. So, my question was, how is that possible? And asking that question, the teachers would say, well, if a child shows up and they do their homework and they participate, they essentially can get an A. And that's a sad reality in our schools here in Delaware.
I don't think Delaware's alone in that. It really is. School choice is really, it is picking up momentum, it seems, across the country. There are a number of states who have implemented it. I think the fear mongering comes from the teachers unions, that they say that, oh, you're gonna ruin public schools. Well, the public schools are doing a pretty good job of ruining themselves right now, right? So if you incentivize them to compete, I think that only raises the level of the public schools. So you are in favor then of school choice, in some form. I mean, we've gotten really creative nationally in terms of whether it's a voucher or micro schooling or whatever it is. That's something that you would be in favor of. Absolutely.
And I've looked at some of the things that have been proposed across the nation and have been implemented, and, being able to give businesses tax incentives to give to these funding streams for kids who may not be able to afford even private schools. There are certainly things that we can do to make this effective, and it's a win-win for everybody, because I don't know about you, but this generation of kids are going to be the ones that are going to be taking care of us. And it's scary, that they're not being properly educated. So I think it's very important that we invest in our children. They are indeed our future.
They are. And that doesn't mean that we give them power now. It means we train them to take over the levers of power when they are adult enough to do so. All right, I'm going to give you a web address that you really should memorize. It is besthotgrill.com, besthotgrill.com. There are a lot of special events coming up. Father's Day is this weekend. There are people graduating all over the place. And besthotgrill.com recommends the gift of great grilling and healthy eating. Now, if you've got a dad in your life, a grad in your life, or any other person you want to honor with a birthday gift, any kind of gift, do it with a gift that's going to be used, a gift that will be unforgettable, and a gift that is truly hot. And that would be a Solaire infrared grill from besthotgrill.com. See, Solaire infrared grills heat up to 1,000 degrees in just 3 minutes. And they produce juicy, tasty food, unmatched by conventional grills. So in our family, we grill a ton of food, and the difference on a Solaire is unbelievable. The char is so good. You could also this summer be taken to the road or having a staycation. Now, Solaire has hot and fast portable grills. They have built-ins and they have cart models. So you can step up your grilling game no matter where you are or what you're doing. All Solaire infrared grills are made in the USA. That's another thing I love about this company. They are built to last. This will be the last grill you ever buy. More importantly, Solaire infrared grills deliver the wow that everybody likes to receive in a gift or a major purchase. So learn more about the amazing Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com. Solaire infrared gift giving at besthotgrill.com. So you and I met at an event in Philadelphia, which is not, how long of a drive was that for you from Delaware to Philadelphia?
Depending on traffic, it's usually right around an hour and 15 minutes or so for me. So I'm used to making that trip. So I do it in my sleep. I used to commute to Wilmington every day, which was about 15, 20 minutes shy of that destination. So
okay,
not too terrible.
I always, being from California, I always forget how easy it is to kind of drive around, and you're from state to state in the Northeast. So, but we met at the event where Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt, two congressmen, were talking specifically to Black men, but there were a number of Black women, including yourself, that were there. You know, I've heard people misrepresent Byron Donalds' comments from that evening. I have heard people put down these two congressmen, calling them people who have, quote, lost their minds, that they are, you know, kissing up to the MAGA crowd, et cetera. And it bothers me, not because I can't handle the barbs, but because it's misrepresentative of what took place that night and who these men are. So I want to give you an opportunity to describe what you took away from that event with Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt.
You know, I have seen the media just do excerpts of a conversation and twist it with a slant and a bias. And it's very unfortunate because I actually took some pictures and posted those things up on my social media. And I received some scathing comments, you know, from having been in that crowd, having been associated with those two wonderful congressmen. And, you know, I had to have some very down to earth conversations with some folks. And I had to let them know that if you had been in that room, you would have heard the overarching global conversation. And it's unfortunate that those are the things that the media chose to focus on, because I took away a great feeling that night that we had representation in federal government that well served communities of color. And so, you know, it's always a situation where people of color are political pawns during election cycle. And, you know, it's one of the reasons why I actually shifted. I was a lifelong Democrat before I shifted to Republican about 8 years ago. And, you know, I felt like I was being hustled for my vote as a woman of color. People would come out, they would overpromise and underdeliver every single political cycle. I had attended so many roundtable discussions regarding education, business, etc. And people would look like they were interested in what I had to say, but they took away my valuable comments and suggestions and did nothing with them. And so, you know, it's one of those things where these two men talked about things and the issues that affect the communities of color. And I thought that they were very well stated. I can relate as a single mom, having had to go through public housing, using food stamps. I never received welfare, but I know how difficult it is to climb out of, you know, that state of existence. And just from personal experience, I know that the system incentivizes people to not be married. You end up being penalized at some point. And so, you know, I took the comments away from that night as something that was legitimate and a legitimate concern, that the family unit had been divided. And I think that if the people who had those snippets of the conversation had, you know, went back about maybe 5 minutes prior to that comment about, you know, what the family looks like currently, I think that they would have seen it better in context. And I think that's the sadness, is that, you know, the people chose to spin it in such a way to where it was negative, when if you had the benefit of having heard the rest of the conversation, you would have known what the point was being made there.
You just opened up two new doors I'd like to walk through with you. One was, I I'd love to know how you did dig yourself out, because you talk about raising 10 children. You talk about being a single mom. You talk about understanding how difficult it is with public housing and the rest. And here you are. You're running for Congress. And so you understand what it takes. I'd love for you to inspire some people, right? What does it take? What did you do? How did you do it?
Well, I did have the benefit of coming from a family that would have been considered upper middle class. My dad was retired. He was career Air Force, so he had his retirement from the Air Force. He also worked for the state of Delaware after retired for a certain amount of years. My father inspired me greatly. His story was about a young man in an agricultural disadvantaged community in the mountains of Virginia. He wanted to have opportunity for himself. And so he signed up and went into the military, not knowing that his next step was to go to Vietnam. So he always set the bar for his kids such that we would have the opportunity that he didn't. He wanted to go to college. I'm proud to say that after my father retired from the military, he went back to school and he achieved not only his bachelor's degree, but his master's degree as well. And so for us, he gave the example of perseverance. And I was not able to finish college when I started right out of high school. And I can tell you that I was both pregnant and breastfeeding some of my kids while I was finishing up my undergrad and my master's degree. And I was able to do that at the top of my class. I graduated with almost a 4.0 doing it. And so I was going through some very difficult circumstances. I had a very troublesome marriage. And it's amazing that when you have the inner fortitude to want to do better for yourself, you will look for the resources. I was determined because, I came from a background. My mother's a retired RN, where I wasn't stuck on public assistance. And that's a very general characteristic when it comes down to generational people that are essentially stuck inside of that system.
Right.
And that wasn't my point of reference. So because I didn't have that in front of me, I had the inner courage and the strength to push through. And it was very difficult because here in Delaware, you can qualify for food stamps and or Medicaid on two different measurements in their algorithm. So if you make $1 over a threshold, you actually can lose your medical coverage and still receive food benefits. And so, I would like to see us here in Delaware do the same kinds of things that other neighboring states are doing and model, a progression to where you don't completely lose your Medicaid. You can actually pay into your Medicaid and stay, on it, but you'll pay like a small amount until you can achieve self-sufficiency and not go cold turkey. I was in a position to where I had my VA benefits to help me during that transitional phase in my life. And so I was able to go to school courtesy of Uncle Sam. I received a stipend, and those things didn't affect my benefits through social services. So I was in a very unique situation, but I really understand how people get stuck on social services. And it's almost like you get trapped and you're penalized over and over again for trying to make strides towards self-sufficiency. So it begs the question, are we really, really, really wanting to see people get off of Medicaid and food stamps? I don't think so.
That is a great point. I talk an awful lot about free speech, how it is really at the heart of our democracy. It's a principle that is sacred to this country. It's the cornerstone that supports every other freedom that we cherish. But we're living in a digital age, and that means that discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are in some cases they're being muffled, being silenced, being overshadowed in mainstream narratives. And I know that leaves a lot of you feeling voiceless in the conversations that matter so much to us about our financial independence and our security. And this is where Wealth Protection Research steps in. This is a group armed with a mission that has never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They are defenders of free speech. They are committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This is a free report that highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money as we head into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media will not touch, and listeners can get it completely free by texting IDEAS to 76626 to get your free copy. That's the word IDEAS, IDEAS. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, do this now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to get your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It is time to widen the scope of what we're told, to actually hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle. But of course, you know you can handle it. And to take control of our financial destinies, text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy now.
And it's almost like you get trapped and you're penalized over and over again for trying to make strides towards self-sufficiency. So it begs the question, are we really, really, really wanting to see people get off of Medicaid and food stamps? I don't think so.
That is a great point. And I have talked to people before here where I live in Minnesota and other places. It's this idea that, well, if I get that second job and I make too much money, then I lose benefit X or Y.
Absolutely.
And you're thinking, but if you still aren't making enough to really, get yourself all the way through, it's really, I think people think it's sinister to believe that the government would like to keep you attached and reliant upon it. But there's sure a lot of evidence for that, Danielle, that the reliance that they, because what it does is it keeps you under their control. I mean, it takes away your financial freedom, your freedom to make decisions about where you want to live or what you want to do with your life, or, how you want to raise your kids in many cases. Absolutely. And yeah, so I feel as though people that, are saying, yes, I love the government. And that's why I'm going to vote for Democrats, because they're going to do stuff for me. And it's like, why don't you want to do stuff for you? You can. And I feel like this gets back to education, where so much today we're telling kids, particularly young kids, brown and black kids, kids of color, you've really been oppressed and you're being oppressed and you are a victim. And therefore, basically take the steps that a victim would take, rather than, what? Let's show you all these examples. Let's show you Danielle Hall. Let's show you Barack Obama. Let's show you Oprah Winfrey. Let's show you the representation that has achieved generational wealth. This is something that Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt were talking about. Generational wealth, where you have something to lift your kids up with. And it's achievable if people want it. It is not a zero-sum game. It's not as though if so-and-so has it, you can't have it. So I wonder how we do a better job of communicating that. What do you think?
Well, I know that here in Delaware, we had a piece of legislation that passed that mandated that financial literacy be taught inside of the schools. Right. And unfortunately, again, we have no accountability for that standard. And I don't think that there are very many schools who have incorporated that here in Delaware. And I know quite a few people who have been actively engaged, present party included, and having that conversation in schools about financial literacy. As a matter of fact, my daughter was just in here like a couple of hours ago, and she was talking about this new, very expensive sneaker. And I remember a good friend of mine coming in and partnering with me to do some things inside of the school. And he had this wonderful video of this young man who decided that instead of buying the expensive sneaker, he would start buying shares in Nike.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that young man at about the age of 15 had amassed quite a bit of stock in the company and was actually able to tell his story in a video that we presented to elementary school kids, and the look on their faces at the positive outcome of a young brown child telling that story.
Yeah.
You could just see the pride that these kids had and the excitement and the enthusiasm about investing. But
Yeah.
you have to introduce those things to kids.
Yes.
And unfortunately, parents are struggling at home trying to just make ends meet. And we don't see those discussions going on at the dinner table like we once did. It's hard to get your kids to even sit down. It's hard to get the family together to sit down and even have a meal together. But, it's very important that, and again, going back to that conversation that night, we talked about financial literacy, and Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt, really hit it out of the park, that these are things that are critical as a part of the family unit to have conversations around. And, it's twofold. We can hit them at the schools, and then we can do things that engage the parents to be able to have these skills in their toolbox to be able to give to their children. So, there's work to be done in this area. And I think, it's important that we have voices that are leading that charge and that challenge, Michelle.
Economists are warning that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. In times like this, Proverbs 20:21 reminds us to preserve what we've built. Right now, that wisdom points us toward gold. Now, if you haven't had your eye on gold, time to make it a priority. Call my friends at Priority Gold to find out how they can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Act right now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. Again, 1-800-405-GOLD. Final topic. We've got an election coming up in 2024. You're well aware. You're running for office. And the divisiveness in this country right now is unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. And you're a little younger than I am, so I'm kind of sure that you feel the same way. We've got a choice here as far as the presidency and the leadership that, yes, we have three branches of government, but the president is the one that represents us on the world stage, represents us globally, represents our sense of security and strength in the world. You understand peace through strength, having served. So when people find out that you've become conservative, and it sounds like some people don't like that. They think you've maybe turned your back. What do you say about this election and how important it is to get us to a place where we look strong again on the world stage?
I agree, certainly, Michelle, that, people are looking at us on the world stage as a nation that has weakened its strength position over the years. And I think that when I looked at that a number of years ago, I really was sharing my concern about how we appeared on the global stage years ago, because I think that it breeds a lot of the things that we're seeing going on overseas right now. I think that people see us as a nation who can't hold our own anymore in this conversation, and that, we're a joke, and that breeds all kinds of possibilities for our security, our national
Yeah.
security.
Yeah.
And so, I, as a military member, understand the long-reaching ramifications of that. Not having strong leadership at the top and appearing weak to the world is a bad place for us to be. So we certainly have to figure out who would best represent us in 2024 in this election. And aside from the presidency, I've really had an opportunity to engage voters all up and down the state. I as a Republican in 2020, ran for lieutenant governor here. I was actually able to achieve the highest amount of votes for any statewide Republican in Delaware history. So
Wow.
I don't really feel that people are stuck on voting their affiliations as opposed to voting their value, but that's an education piece. And I've been working on that for the greater part of the last 10 years, trying to get people to understand that you have to be strategic with your ballot. And, there are some great Democrats that I love, respect, and admire, that I feel, represent us well. There are people on both sides of the aisle that have certainly misstepped and are worthy of the criticisms that they have received. And, my encouragement to voters is to do your homework and do the deep dive and figure out what people stand for and be strategic with your ballot. Even growing up as a Democrat, I didn't really tell that story in great detail, but I was actually challenged as to why I was affiliated as a Democrat. And at that point, I was given one of those political surveys that you answer the questions and it churns out a response. And I took that, and the gentleman who gave it to me says, "Congratulations, you're a Republican." And I laughed. I said, "Well, you won't mind if I fact check that." So, I encourage people to go online. There's a lot of these assessment tools. Take the tool and figure out where you lie politically, and then start really becoming engaged so that when you go into the voting booth, you're not an uneducated voter. I tell people all the time, the worst voter is an uneducated voter, the one that goes in, gets the "I voted" sticker, comes out and says, "I did my civic duty." And you ask that person, "Well, who did you vote for?" And they can't tell you a single name or what that person stands for. So I was very blessed growing up. My parents taught me how to be strategic with my ballot. And I can still remember my father sitting at the dinner table talking about who we as a family were going to vote for that cycle. And so he really instilled in me that I could play tic-tac-toe with my ballot. I didn't have to vote straight party. And he educated me on who was best for us here. And I trusted his judgment. And so, I'm constantly hammering that the fact that this particular office that I'm running for, this is where our nation's policy is created and implemented. And it is so very important. Even if you have your malaise about who you want to vote for at the top of the ticket, don't miss my line, because we need a voice in there who's going to be able to articulate our concerns to people who are going to be able to be the decision makers in this country. And so if you really want to have great representation, you have to elect the people who are going to be in there and fight for you. And I'm sure you can see I'm not afraid to talk. I definitely have had some very difficult squabbles inside of my own four walls with all of those children. So I come prepared to do some conflict resolution and find the solution that we can all work with. And it's just been sad to watch what's gone on the House and Senate floors in DC because, of the infighting and the bickering. And who does that serve? No one.
Nobody.
So we really have to have somebody who's prepared to come in and do the work and be a voice of reason, be able to mitigate, the arguments and be able to, problem solve effectively. So I think that I am certainly capable of doing that. And I'm looking forward to bringing that voice to the U.S. House of Representatives in 24.
I'll tell you what, in November, like late November, let's have you back after you've won, because I feel very confident in you. I only wish I lived in Delaware so I could vote for you. Yeah, I'm going to put my cards on the table. You instill a lot of confidence. You bring a lot of knowledge, clearly, experience. And I hope Delaware does the right thing. and votes you in. It's been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure to talk to you, and I'm going to keep an eye on this race. And like I said, when you win, we'll have you back so we can talk about what's next.
Thank you, Michele.
She's Danielle Hall. We've been showing you how you can donate to her campaign, follow her on social, et cetera, et cetera. So please do, because, even though you may not live in Delaware, we want great candidates from all over this country. So if you want to support Danielle, please do. She is brave. She is doing good. And we say that at the end of every podcast, be brave, do good. And we'll see you next time. And help Danielle Hall out, please.